All right, hump day, also April Fools, but I'm probably not going to do anything for you guys. Welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. We are 24 minutes away from the launch of the first American moon mission since 1972. You see the Artemis 2 rocket on the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral, Florida. Artemis 2 is going to embark on a 10-day mission that will reportedly take the 4-man crew around the moon and hopefully back safely. We're going to take you there live when they launch. Also, major news in the crypto sphere. You know I'm a crypto bro. The Clarity Act is gaining traction in the U.S. Senate as lawmakers reached a deal with Coinbase and some other platforms, which was a major hangup in the legislation. If the bill passes, it could make more than 20% of American capital eligible for crypto investments. We're going to keep an eye on that as it happens. And Nancy Pelosi out there, usual fear-mongering, claiming that Republicans can't be trusted with elections.
They may try to creep into the technology and create a false count.
Really? Coming from her? Whatever. But first, the impact of today's Supreme Court hearing on birthright citizenship to illegal immigrants. If it goes in Trump's favor, it could remake the electoral map in favor of Republicans for the next 50 years. Let's do this. Birthright citizenship to illegal aliens argued at the Supreme Court today, and Trump was there in person. For the first time in the history of America, a sitting president attended a Supreme Court argument, highlighting exactly how important this is because, and the left knows this, if birthright citizenship to illegal aliens is overturned, Democrats could lose 8 to 12 million voters. Compound that onto Trump calling for a new census that would remove illegal aliens from the congressional maps. Blue states could lose another 15 to 20 congressional seats. So Democrats are literally fighting for their electoral life here. So naturally, in true liberal fashion, it's unbelievable, the ACLU was arguing this. They chose a minority, a woman who was the child of parents who were immigrants, to virtue signal the emotional part of this argument that should absolutely have no bearing in any part of this case. This gets a little weedy, but I want you to stay with me here, folks. The two sides are essentially both using the first sentence of the 14th Amendment as the foundation for their case, which reads, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. Focusing on one term that you'll hear over and over again, domicile. That means basically living. They're legally living here. Are they physically living here? Well, the ACLU says that all you have to do is physically live here. And Trump's argument, or the Solicitor General's argument on behalf of Trump, is that you have to legally live here. That's why the ACLU lawyer, her entire argument hinges on the omission of a significant part of the sentence, representing to the court all persons born or naturalized to the United States. Then she skips a little bit, doesn't read that part, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. And then she tried to bolster her argument, after skipping a significant portion of the sentence she's using, with 3 examples: World War II internment camps and children born to them, Indian reservations in the jurisdiction, and Irish immigrants that are cited in the Wong Kim Ark case.
When the United States was detaining Japanese nationals who were deemed enemy aliens of the United States, when those enemy aliens had babies in these detention camps, everyone agreed that those babies were U.S. citizens. The Indian tribal exception, Elk versus Wilkins tells us, comes from the constitutionally unique status of Indian tribes. In the Indian Commerce Clause, the children of Irish, Italian, and other immigrants, which Wong Kim Ark refers to and the framers refer to, would not have been citizens either.
Okay, a lot of gibberish. She really didn't know what she's talking about. I'm going to break this down one by one. The 3 examples that actually she used kind of prove the opposite of her point entirely. And I think it was a missed opportunity to not point that out in the court hearing today, but let's do this. The first is the internment camps. The Japanese people who were held in internment camps during World War II they were detained against their will, and then the children that were born there were then citizens because, dare I say, they were subject to the jurisdiction of the detaining authority of those internment camps. This is actually the exact meaning of the 14th Amendment that was originally written for the children of slaves brought here against their will that were subject to the jurisdiction of the laws of slavery at the time. Now, the ACLU's second point, which was Indian reservations, the ACLU lady actually made an argument against herself using a Supreme Court precedent of Elk versus Wilkins, a case from 1884.
I think he says, Justice Gray says at one point, we might as well be talking about someone who's born in Mexico.
Elk v. Wilkins said that Indians born on an Indian reservation, because of their independent sovereignty, that's why they can open casinos and stuff, were not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Hence, in that case, the Indian born on the reservation was denied his citizenship and right to vote. And her third point against the Irish in Wong Kim Ark, that case, the Irish that she cites, they came here through a process. They didn't come here illegally like the people that Trump is talking about and targeting in his executive order. They came through places like Ellis Island, so they were not here illegally. They came via, because Ellis Island was an actual place, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and therefore, to quote Wong Kim Ark, didn't make her case. Because in that Supreme Court decision, Wong Kim Ark, 1898, he was born to legal residents legally working here from China and confirmed his citizenship by the Supreme Court on the basis of, quote, being born on U.S. soil who is under the protection and obedience of the U.S. government, meaning that they were living within the law, unlike someone who crossed our border illegally. Now, John Sauer, the Solicitor General, which I generally like this guy. I think he's done a pretty good job in a lot of these arguments. He was arguing on behalf of the executive order for Trump about ending birthright citizenship. His argument includes the whole sentence of the 14th Amendment. I know, weird. Including and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This should have been like the end of the argument because of the examples I just mentioned. But Clarence Thomas, actually, he threw a wrench in everything and made, I think, the most salient point that I hadn't even thought of, which is, does the 14th Amendment even apply at all to illegal immigration?
How much of the debates around the 14th Amendment had anything to do with immigration?
This is why I love Clarence Thomas, because he always, without fail, interprets the Constitution with the intent as it was written at the time. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, wow, how many people were illegally immigrating to the United States after the Civil War? And John Sauer had potentially the best answer of the day regarding this issue.
There is a general principle that's a broad principle that's adopted in the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof, and we submit that our theory of allegiance and domicile-based allegiance is what explains those specific exceptions that everybody was aware of, but it is broad enough to sweep in future situations, and as you pointed out, illegal immigration did not exist then. Now, the problem of temporary visitors did exist, and it's very interesting that as you look at pages 26 and 28 of our brief, commentators going from 1881 until 1922 are uniformly saying the children of temporary visitors are not included.
Boom. They're not included. So historical precedent appears to show that the very constitutional provision that the ACLU is using to make their argument may not even apply at all to illegal immigrants, which would leave Donald Trump's executive order barring birthright citizenship from illegal immigrants completely constitutional. And he would win, which he's won most of these. But I think a point that did not get enough of the spotlight today is the legal precedent of Maslanjak versus the United States from recently, 2017, where the Supreme Court, in a majority opinion, ironically delivered by the liberal Justice Kagan, held that the government can revoke citizenship when there's a material fraud in obtaining that citizenship. So wouldn't fraud in immigration be equal to coming here illegally? Like, I would imagine they carry the same legal weight. So my question to the ACLU and to the Supreme Court, that same court with some of the same sitting members hearing that case today, because that was only decided back in 2017, if they ruled that lying can get your citizenship revoked, why would they not apply the same legal standard to coming here illegally? And why should the product of that legality or illegality yield a child's citizenship under the illegal pretense of it? To use the term of the day, domicile. The argument was convoluted. It was legalese, which is what lawyers do. But the root point, you can't reward somebody and give them something so precious as U.S. citizenship if they broke the law to get here. Former Assistant Attorney General and the man who drafted the original version of this executive order, Theo Wold. Theo, what did you make of the arguments today?
Yeah, Carl, I think you've laid it out pretty cleanly here at the outset. I'll say, look, one thing your listeners, your viewers should know is going into this argument, you've already got 3 votes hardwired against the administration's position. None of the liberal justices came interested in subtlety argument. They had their minds made up already. So that leaves essentially 4 votes for the taking. And the Chief Justice was pretty clear out of the gate that he's probably going to side with the liberals. So 3 votes, maybe to mix up with Alito and Thomas. It's going to be a close call. It's going to be a very close call.
Yeah, but the problem is, look, I don't know if you get like a class on like, you know, convoluting these things, but the case seems so simple. And I think the Solicitor General, Sauer, does generally a very good job at these things. But I think today he let the libs pull him off track. The whole instance is the 2017 case, Maslenijak versus the United States of 2017, and the fact that if you're not here legally, how can you be gifted something that requires a legal status?
Yeah, again, Carl, I think every American sitting around their dining room table this evening understands what this case is really about. Is the United States a homeland or is it a hotel? Can anyone come here when they're visiting Disney World and then have a child, whoops, and that child's equal to you or I or anyone else who's an American citizen? Every American gets this, and unfortunately, today was another example of how detached the court has become from the realities confronting everyday working Americans. And I'll just say very quickly, that was no better exemplified than the Chief Justice's sort of just casual dismissal of this idea of birth tourism. Is it really that big of a problem? Okay, well, if it is a problem, it certainly isn't a part of our legal analysis. And I think most Americans would find that deeply, deeply disturbing. Yeah, well, the other thing, too, which caught me was the liberal justices consistently referred to them not as illegal immigrants, but undocumented immigrants, which, to your point, kind of showed where they're already at on this one. Yeah, for sure. And Ketanji Brown Jackson had this, just incredible riff about allegiance means that you somehow have to obey the law. So if I were to take a trip to Tokyo in her hypothetical and someone steals my wallet, well, I would hope the Tokyo authorities would help me find my wallet. So that's allegiance. Again, any American sitting at their table knows that's not what the framers of the 14th Amendment meant when they meant allegiance. It's certainly not what we expect from our fellow citizens in serving this nation and serving our government. Yeah, well, I want to actually go back to Ketanji Brown Jackson, as you mentioned, because she asked the very, the most ridiculous question I think I've ever heard. I mean, like, I wouldn't ask my 8-year-old wouldn't ask something this stupid, but she was like, how do we know if you're a citizen? Do we just depose mothers when they're giving birth? It's like, no, you swear on an affidavit, which is a birth certificate, that we are here legally and this child is here of us. Yeah, wasn't that just a remarkable moment? Again, the elites in D.C. are so far removed from the reality that anyone who's had a kid at a public hospital or a health clinic or birthing center knows, just as the ordinary course of family life. They give you paperwork. Vital statistics, as you said, is essentially an affidavit that, yes, this is our child. Yes, we are legally present. And yes, we are entitled to submit this paperwork for a passport and a social security card. Mm-hmm. And here's a member of the Supreme Court saying, oh, what are we going to do? Depose these women while they're giving birth to figure out if the kids are legal? It's like, look, the operational concerns easily answered, Justice. Go visit your local hospital. Well, let's go through the cases that the AC, by the way, the fact that they chose somebody who came here was, a child of people who were here on a student visa. She was a woman. She was all these things that to me, they're just like waving it in our face. But she brought up Elk versus Winkins, which is 1884, which is a guy born on an Indian reservation was not given the right to vote because he was deemed by the Supreme Court 130 years ago that he was not a citizen because he was born on an Indian reservation. And they said in that decision, quote, they might as well be born in Mexico. Yeah, I mean, look, I think the Solicitor General did his best at really clarifying what these exceptions mean. We have long understood that tribal sovereignty is a separate sort of sovereign authority from the federal government or state governments. So it would make sense that if you're born on tribal land in a federally recognized tribe, that's not the same as a U.S. citizen. Mm-hmm. We've ameliorated that through statute over time. But for all of these exceptions, the problem, Carl, was the court's view, as expressed by Justice Gorsuch, was those exceptions are essentially frozen in amber. Mm-hmm. You can't analogize to them. They're not representative of extending the logic to illegal aliens. Unfortunately, you're stuck with these exceptions and only those exceptions.
But let's talk about why the libs want this so bad. Right now, we know that illegals are included in the census data, which give Democrats between 5 and 20 seats, giving a generous thing here. 5 and 20 congressional seats are added to Democrat districts because of the influx of their sanctuary cities and illegal immigrants. They can't vote. They shouldn't be voting, but we know that they do in some cases. But they do count towards who gets what congressional seats that are voted in deep blue areas. That said, this could cost them as many as 20 seats in the next election if the census is redacted, but also how many people, I mean, we're talking 8 to 10, 12 million people that came here, were born with parents who are not legal citizens, that may have to have their votes, their voter eligibility canceled after this, and we know they ain't voting mostly Republican.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Carl. I mean, for your viewers, the simple thesis here to understand why is this case so important, it gets to the very heart and the nature of who's a citizen and who gets to give their consent to the laws and the policies of the government, right? That Civics 101, the consent of the governed. Is America just to be determined by members of the CCP or Russian oligarchs or Mexican nationals who just show up in Anaheim? Or is it really about a government and a country ruled by the citizens, free citizens? And that's really what's at issue. So the whole architecture of the left, their whole ideology hinges on open borders and the power they obtain from that.
So real quick, last question. What happens? Let's say it goes in Trump's favor. I actually, reluctantly, I say I don't think it will. I think you're right, 6-3 against us, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong, but what happens then? Do we deport 10 million people, or do we just say, hey, you're no longer eligible, you're legal residents now, but you have to reapply for naturalization?
Yeah, I think this is one of the strategic choices the administration made. This came out in a question from Gorsuch is, look, there's a statute on the subject. You want us to address the statute, or you want us to go all the chips in the middle of the table and answer the constitutional question? And Sauer said, we want a bright line holding on the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. So if the court goes against the administration, it would seem like this is settled for all time, unless the American people pick up the gauntlet, the people, and they choose to amend the Constitution, which is a high bar, but maybe we've come to that juncture where we really have to start talking about what does the 14th Amendment mean in an age of jet travel and Russian oligarchs who show up in Miami and have children.
Getting 2/3 of the states to agree on anything, including oxygen, is going to be tough. Theo, we appreciate it. Brilliant legislation or executive order you originally authored.
Thanks for having me.
All right,
Thanks.
coming up, hypocrisy on full display. FBI Director Kash Patel wants to release files on Eric Swalwell's ties to a suspected Chinese spy, and Dems are absolutely losing their mind. But where was this outrage when they wanted to... Eric Swalwell wanted to release all these files on Trump. We're going to break that down in a bit. But first, we're just a few minutes away from the historic Artemis 2 launch, the first crewed mission beyond low Earth orbit in over 50 years. We're going to bring that to you live next.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.
Buying a new car? You need WeatherTech. Perhaps a nice used car? You need WeatherTech. Or maybe you're still driving Old Faithful. You need WeatherTech. No matter the age of your vehicle, American-made WeatherTech products are the solution. Because masses don't care what year your vehicle is.
See? You do need WeatherTech.
Order your American-made protection at WT.com.
Support your long-term health with Fatty 15, the science-backed, award-winning Pure C15 supplement.
Fatty 15 is reversing aging at the cellular level, and I know it's doing what I want it to do, which is prove longevity and wellness.
Discover more at fatty15.com.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com. Between drained investment accounts, lost wages, and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. Only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package with reimbursement up to $3 million. LifeLock. Join today.
All right, folks, we're waiting for any minute to get word that Artemis 2 is going to launch the 10-day manned mission up and around the moon, hopefully coming back safely. Everything goes well. As that happens, we will see that clock up there in the top left-hand corner, still at 10 minutes. So once that starts ticking, we'll bring it to you live. But also, President Trump tonight set to address the nation at 9 p.m. with the latest on Iran. Let me bring my friend, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony.
Hey, Carl.
There's a lot of speculation around this speech. I'm very anxious of it. Oil has come down, I think, almost 7% on the day because he's anticipated to say, we're done. We've accomplished our goal. The Strait of Hormuz, Europe, China, whatever, you want it, you deal with it. And NATO, by the way, screw you guys, we're out.
Well, I think it's a wise move because we've done what we need to do. I think we've achieved the objectives he set out to achieve. And Carl, yeah, it's been a disappointment. Most of the countries who actually depend on the oil from that region haven't shown up, even though it's in their own self-interest. So I think it's a wise move. The other thing to remember, we have seen an uptick in shipping. Over the last 3 days, we've seen 10 to 12 ships go in and out, which is not the 136 a day, but it means that there is some level of progress. We've eliminated virtually all their launchers. They're still shooting some, but I think, Carl, it'd probably be a wise thing for him to do.
Right. Well, Trump, obviously, look, I think NATO has been useless for decades, and I've been wanting to get out of it for a long time. But Donald Trump is finally being like, you know what? You guys really screwed us over on this. Roll this.
One thing, we're very disappointed. I'll say it publicly. We're very disappointed with NATO because NATO has done absolutely nothing. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours.
Big interesting thing here because NATO was like, you got to send money to Ukraine, you got to send weapons to Ukraine. Right. We now found out that most of that was just going in kickbacks and fraud. However, Trump has now called their bluff, said, hey, guys, we want you here, and nobody came.
Yeah. So to that point, we gave billions plus a lot of the weapons we need now, Carl. Remember, one of the things that Zelensky was most upset about is that we said, oh, we're not going to send you the weapons that we were going to send you because we need them. And he got all uppity. He's been lying in public about what we said versus what he agreed to. It's not a good situation. And Carl, you and I have talked about this. The audience, I think, agrees with us. It's time to walk away from Ukraine. It's been a money pit, and we've accomplished virtually nothing. And at the same time, we've actually weakened ourselves by supporting NATO. So it's time that we actually seek a strategy that actually benefits the United States and us over these allies who basically are fair weather allies.
Yeah, and I would look. If I was President Trump, I'd turn around and I'd say, "All right, NATO, you didn't help us here. We helped you because you asked in Ukraine. We want to get paid back all the money we spent in Ukraine, and then we can talk about us staying in. Otherwise, bon voyage." The other thing is with Iran, it appears by Trump's truth that Iran has actually asked for a ceasefire, negotiating one. Trump's saying that, quote, Iran's new regime president, much less radicalized and far more intelligent than his predecessors, has just asked the United States for a ceasefire we will consider when Hormuz Strait is open, free, and clear. Until then, we're blasting Iran into oblivion, or as they say, back to the Stone Ages. This is what I've told people. I'm like, this was always the plan, is beat them into oblivion, and now they are coming back to that. When has Iran ever in the last 50 years wanted to come to the table with us? Tony, did we lose you there? I think we lost Tony. But my point is here is that in this entire thing, look, and I've told people, I said, give Trump his timeline. Like he said, 4 to 6 weeks. We're at like week 5. Okay, this is a major movement. The fact that Iran, a more reasonable leader, not some religious zealot, some Islamic cleric or something, wants to actually sit down and negotiate with us is a great thing. Like, I don't really understand how they're closing the Strait of Hormuz or threatening it or anything. But remember, we did tell you that the Strait of Hormuz is not being closed by Iran primarily. It's being closed by mostly insurance companies out of Great Britain, who, by the way, have almost no sources of independent energy from their own country. So they need this more than we do. You have a significant amount of energy that flows to Europe, to China, all the Russian trade and things like that, refinement going through that thing. America doesn't need that. So the issue that we're facing right now is negotiating with somebody good. And the problem is the shipping insurance companies out of the UK are the ones that are doing the most damage to this. And I think that's part of Trump's original problem with this whole thing is the external forces, the unwillingness to let us use their air bases in Spain and the UK and a variety of other ones, because they're influencing this conflict and making it take longer than it could. I mean, could you imagine the range and how fast we could have wrapped this up if we had 3 times the amount of ships in the region, if we had double the aircraft, if we had the backing of all the NATO partners? Nobody would be able to stand up to that, but they didn't do it. Everybody sat back. Everybody said, oh, Trump's doing this, Trump's doing that. We don't like what Trump is doing. They always do that. And then when Trump actually puts his hand on the button and says, I'm going to fix a problem that you people have allowed to exist for 47 years, all the experts that allowed to exist for 47 years, taking hostages, blowing up service members. By the way, coalition service members served in Iraq and Afghanistan that were affected by Iran. They did nothing. Finally, the guy comes in. And, to be honest, like there's a bunch of Republicans that soured on this too. And now Trump's doing something about it. And now it looks like, as of 9 p.m. tonight when he gives this speech, he may be giving us some really good news. The markets, I said, are already reacting, down $7 a barrel. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We got plenty more coming back. We're waiting on the Artemis 2 launch, and we'll bring it to you live.
1 in 4 taxpayers was a victim of identity theft.
Like me.
That's 1 in 4 hardworking, honest Americans who lost billions in refunds. During tax season, everyone is vulnerable.
We're not just tax-paying Americans.
We're fraud-paying Americans.
And we're not paying anymore.
With up to $3 million in coverage, LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Got a CT scan, and the next thing that I heard was you have to have surgery immediately or you have 4 months to live. Well, it was the hardest moment of my life because I felt like the world fell out from under me.
It was the worst news I've ever heard. Our world changed that day.
Every 15 seconds in America, someone like Jay hears the words, "You have cancer." And this year, more than 600,000 Americans will lose their lives to this devastating disease. But hope lives because of people like you. Go online or scan to donate just $25 a month. Your gift will help save lives.
If I have a chance to make it through this, it will be because of the American Cancer Society's focus on research and innovation.
At the American Cancer Society, we're leading the fight against cancer on every front, funding breakthrough research, helping patients reach life-saving treatment at no cost, and giving families a free place to stay near care.
I don't know how many more holidays I'm going to have with Jay. We need a cure now. The American Cancer Society gives us that fighting chance.
Cancer doesn't stop and let you catch up. It's continuing to move. The funding to the American Cancer Society allows us to keep up the pace with cancer.
Your monthly gift helps fund the research and care that families like Jay's depend on. Become a monthly donor today and receive this American Cancer Society t-shirt as our thank you.
Hope is something that has helped me get through this and given me the courage and the strength.
Cancer won't wait, and neither can we. Please go online or scan to donate today. Every minute, every dollar, every act of hope brings us closer to a world without cancer. Donate today.
All right, well, imagine that, a government agency running a little bit behind, but you can see from that clock, 3 minutes and 42 seconds to launch unless something happens. The delay obviously is, I guess it's a government thing, but whatever. Anyway, this whole thing has kind of amplified some thoughts on the internet, despite having exponentially greater technology than they had in the 60s and 70s. Skepticism has led to a lot of questions. We told you yesterday Apollo 13 blew up on its way to the moon in 1970, yet flew all the way around it and returned to Earth in just 6 days, but today's Artemis mission will take 10 days. So one of the leading skeptics, Bart Sibrel of Sibrel.com, investigative journalist and filmmaker whose 2024 interview with Joe Rogan has viewed more than 2 million times. Okay, this to me, Bart, I have a lot of questions about this, and one of the major points you make, and the contention, is the basis for these radiation belts outside the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, in 2023, a NASA video showed that people can't safely travel through these radiation belts that you would have to in order to get to the moon. What say you?
Well, I have a clip sent to your producers, or I can quote it. He's talking about a radiation field that most people don't know exists. That's 1,000 miles above the Earth and 30,000 miles thick, and every manned mission of space has been below that except going to the moon. And he says, quote, NASA engineer, we must solve these radiation challenges before we send people through this region of space. So he said that in 2014, which means the radiation challenges at that point had not been resolved, and you have to survive going through it, which means they didn't go to the moon. I mean, the truth is right in front of us. Somehow, with 1 millionth the computing power of a cell phone, they can drive cars and play golf on the moon on the first attempt. And 60 years later, they can only loop around the moon one time, not even orbit. I mean, come on. NASA has never kept a schedule their entire life except the most complicated one of all time.
Yeah.
Go to Sibrel.com. We have the deathbed confession of Cyrus Eugene Akers, who was chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base. As he was dying, he said he had committed a murder. When the military police investigated it and asked him why he killed a coworker at the base in 1968, he says, because that's where the moon landing was filmed, and he was going to blab, and the NSA told me to kill him, so I did. Then we have Betty Grissom, the widow of the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, who I interviewed for 4 hours, and said her husband was a whistleblower at NASA. He called her the day before he was murdered and said the CIA suddenly showed up at NASA to, quote, inspect the equipment.
Bart.
He's dead the next day from, faulty equipment. So the government is murdering their own people to cover up this crime. If it weren't for it being a positive lie, people would accept it already.
And just for clarity, we can't confirm any of those things except for the soundbite that you did quote, which is true about the radiation belts. I do want to go to Artemis now. We have 33 seconds to launch. We're listening to the countdown of the checklist. They got to, fuel systems go, rockets go, life support go, all the types of systems. Folks, if you've ever been in one of these launch pads, it is like 1 billion different switches that all have to be checked individually for this to go down. Let's listen in to the final countdown, 10 seconds to launch.
10, 9, 8, 7, RS-25 engines, 4, 3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of Integrity on the Artemis 2 mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
AMT high.
On time passing 30 seconds into the flights. Integrity passes the alternate MECO. Target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the 4 main engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity, 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour. Mission elapsed time, passing 1 minute, approaching max Q.
On, Ponce de Leon.
Stan, we have you loud and clear on Ponce de Leon.
Have you the same?
Communication signal transfer confirmed as Integrity and its crew go supersonic. Approaching 90 seconds into the Artemis 2 mission. Integrity is 14 miles in altitude, 8 miles downrange, traveling more than 2,600 miles per hour. Minute 50 seconds of mission elapsed time, standing by for main engine throttle down to 85%, ahead of solid rocket booster separation, expected at the 2-minute 9-second mark. We see throttle down. Confirmed separation. Main engine's throttling up, guidance converged.
Integrity, guidance converged, performance nominal, upper stage RCS ready.
Copy all, Stan.
Integrity, SM priming complete.
SM priming complete.
2 minutes 45 seconds of mission elapsed time into the Artemis 2 mission. Thrusters on Integrity and upper stage confirmed in a ready state, ahead of service module fairing separation. 3 minutes into the flight. Integrity, 49 miles in altitude, 78 miles downrange, now passing 5,000 miles per hour. Standing by for launch abort system jettison.
Houston Integrity, good last jettison, great view.
Copy jettison, Team Eco 8+02.
We see the same on board, Stan.
And Houston has you loud and clear on Tigris at the Carmen line.
Outstanding, Stan, we have you the same.
3 minutes 50 seconds into the flight of Artemis 2, Wiseman, Glover, Cook, and Hansen cross the boundary to space with good comm checks. GPS signals acquired after last jettison now working on internal checks to verify accuracy. Flight Dynamics Officer analyzed the time of main engine cutoff, confirmed at 8 minutes 2 seconds, time of MECO.
Integrity, GPS processing.
Outstanding, Stan. We see the same, and we have a beautiful moonrise. We're headed right at it.
Approaching 5 minutes into the flight, Commander Reed Wiseman confirms he has visuals of his destination. GPS guidance, navigation, and control software finishes internal checks and sends to navigation channels.
Integrity, 3 engine press.
3 engine press.
On time, now passing 5 minutes 20 seconds of mission elapsed time into the Artemis 2 mission. At this point, 3 good main engines are all that's needed to carry Integrity to a nominal main engine cutoff target. Though at this time, we're seeing 4 good engines here in Mission Control Houston. Integrity, 75 miles in altitude, 330 miles downrange, approaching 10,000 miles per hour.
Integrity, looking good at 6 minutes.
Same on board, Stan.
I mean, look, I don't care who you are, whether you believe we went to the moon or not. That is cool right there. That is America. You just launched people to 10,000 miles an hour in 4 minutes or whatever it was. Host of Scrolling with Hayley podcast, Hayley Caronia, and political strategist and CEO of Compass Strategies, Luke Ball. Guys, before I get to any of the new stuff that we have planned, it is real cool, Hayley, to watch a, 30-story building launch up to 10,000 miles an hour into space.
Yes, and we have President Trump to thank for investing into Space Force. I think it's wonderful that we're going to the moon for the first time in decades. And I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist myself. I used to wonder, why haven't we been back in decades? So I think this is a great opportunity to show those conspiracy theorists like myself wrong and show the rest of the world that this is what American exceptionalism looks like.
Yeah, I mean, Luke, pretty impressive. But what's funny to me is the technology basically on its face didn't really change in 50 years. They still use the launch boosters that separate, they splash down. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is landing those things and using them again.
This is the United States flexing its muscle to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And those astronauts, when they get outside of our planet, get to see the entire solar system that just lays before them. I'm sure that's an awe-inspiring experience, and that many of us can only ever dream to ever come close to that. And it's just astounding that this isn't the first time, as we've been talking about, that the United States has flexed its muscle on the world stage. For decades going back, we led in the space race. We just lead the rest of the world. And under this president's leadership, we're going back once again, and I'm just proud to be an American at this point.
Here in America, we're better than you, and we know it. I'm talking to you, Canada. Hayley, I want to get to this, though. It's some news. We're going to keep monitoring this. We're going to keep it on screen here while this whole thing's going on. If something changes, we're going to bring it to you. But while we're talking and just watching this little tiny dot up in the endless sky there, Don Lemon goes on a podcast and talks about how he could lead literally how he could be president. Roll this.
If I wanted to, I know people are going to think I'm crazy. This is going to be the headline, and people are going to laugh about it. I think I could be president of the United States. I could definitely run this country better than Donald Trump.
Paper towel roll could, but yes.
Yeah. Do you know what else I think that I could run better than most people? A news organization. I could come in and fix the bulk of their problems and lickety-split in no time flat.
Dude, wasn't he just in jail, Hayley?
This is delusional. This is narcissism at its finest. That the craziest thing is he says that he can run. Then he says that he can win. Then he says he could be better than Donald J. Trump. I don't think so. I would urge him, Don Lemon, I think he's soft launching this. I think he wants the DNC to pluck him out of obscurity so that he doesn't have to do his failing podcast anymore. And, he's the DEI hire that the Democrats are so desperate for. The only person they've got right now is Gavin Newsom. And, they hate straight white men. So I think Don Lemon might be their only hope.
I know. But that was their thing. They're going to have to bring back white Christian males that are straight in order to win something. Here's something, though, I could have told you a long time ago, Luke. Some of the most popular U.S. graduate degrees aren't worth the money. I'm not talking about the ones that just put this rocket up into space that we're still watching. A new study broke down the very risky proposition, according to a study released by the Post-Secondary Education and Economics Research Center at American University. Degrees in social work, psychology, curriculum, and instruction, potentially zero to negative return on your investment.
I didn't graduate summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or even cum laude. I graduated thank the Lord. And yet I was still able to go out in the United States and start a small business and grow that with experience on Capitol Hill through internships and climb the ladder and get to where I'm owning a business today. And unfortunately, too many people in my generation have been lied to that you have to go hundreds of thousands of dollars to start your life in debt in order to succeed in the United States. And it's simply not the case.
Yeah, well, I didn't finish college either. I dropped out and went to war. Luke, Haley, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Carl.
you.
All right, coming up, we're still following that launch, and we'll keep you posted with any changes there. But the guy that slept with a Chinese spy, gave out sensitive information allegedly at this point for years, is crying that Trump's FBI is interviewing with his California gubernatorial run. Right, we got that next.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
I have an annuity, but I need cash now.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
1 in 4 taxpayers was a victim of identity theft.
We're not just tax-paying Americans.
We're fraud-paying Americans.
And we're not paying anymore.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back.
The first time I experienced vertigo, the room was spinning, like I was in a clothes dryer. Then I started taking LipoBalance support. Its ingredients are clinically shown to help reduce dizziness and spinning. Take back control with lipoflavonoid.
All right, folks, we want to bring you back to what's going on with Artemis right now. Obviously, that's down on the ground, but there is a significant amount of activity happening up there. They're headed to the moon, which is about 240,000 miles away. Keep in mind, the speed of that radio transmission is only 186,000 miles per second, the speed of light. So there's going to be delay starting in the next probably few minutes here on their comms. Let's listen into what's going on.
Man, we don't have the words in the English language to describe this kind of an event, and pride, love, so many emotions. You know, they are truly breaking some barriers, and hopefully, you know, as Gary just said, they've got a long day ahead of them, so wishing them well on everything, but so far, what a beautiful launch to watch.
Yeah, to be returning to the lunar orbit in more than 50 years. Maybe they go farther from Earth than any other humans before them. Maybe they see parts of the moon that we've never seen before. I mean, what a great start to what could be all of these milestones that we break in just a 10-day mission.
Yes, what a way to welcome in the Artemis generation.
Yeah, how do you feel? I mean, we saw some beautiful shots we were covering of course, the rocket, of course, the Earth falling away as we continued up into our ascents, but also some of those crowd shots where we saw young and old, just emotional, overcome by this history-making moment.
Man, we are going back to the moon for all, and we saw that today. We saw that in all the crowds. And yeah, you guys just saw that view, the sunrise or sunset.
All right. I want to bring in my friend Tony Shaffer, Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Tony, you know, you look at this stuff right now, obviously military feats, civilian feat, everything like that. The last time we launched major missions like this, it was in a race, the space race with the Soviet Union.
Yeah. So I'm old enough, Carl, to remember the last launch of Apollo, I think it was 17 from the moon. And I was 5 years old, and I remember watching the landing, the original Apollo 11 landing. So yeah, this is super cool, and I think it's long overdue. We shouldn't have, I shouldn't have 5-year-old memories thinking about the fact that, we should have been doing a lot more to develop the moon. As a matter of fact, between you and me, the Army had plans in the 60s to put a moon base on the moon. We never fulfilled that. So I'm very excited. I think we need to go back, seize the moon, seize the high ground, the ultimate high ground, and this is super exciting.
Tony, I will say that I'm almost glad they didn't put one on the moon, because under Barack Obama or Joe Biden, they would have renamed it some DEI base, and we don't have to deal with that now. So, but, the other thing, I had another guest on who was, really convinced we never went to the moon. I'm on the fence. Right. I think there's a lot of questions that I have. If they can do this, and they can get around the moon, I think it's important they get some pictures of the landing craft and things like that, the flag that we put on there. This could actually put together. I want to believe we went to the moon with all of my heart, because I love America and I think we do things right. But what do you say about that?
I think we went. Look, I was a kid. I remember watching the multiple launches, the actual coverage. This isn't some fictional detached thing. And so I do believe, based on all the information, all the different research that we came back with, moon rocks, I do believe we were there. The problem is this: we didn't follow up. I've never understood why, after going back and making plans to actually put a manned base on the moon, we didn't do that. As a matter of fact, most of the money went to the Cold War instead of the race into space. So I think this is a great time. If you want to develop a commercially space, this is the time we should start doing it. You mentioned Elon Musk before, putting rockets up and down. Now's the time, Carl, to leave Earth and start developing the inner solar system, and then explore space beyond that. The technology is going to follow our efforts.
And anybody who thinks that this is not a good, wise amount of money spent, I mean, it cost us less than the Somali fraud in Minnesota. So I think this is money excellently well spent. 30 seconds left. What's your prediction over the next 10 days, Tony? Do you think any complication? Do you think they actually make it?
No, I think they make it. I think they're going to see some things on the dark side of the moon, and I'm not joking about that. I think they're going to see some things there that we suspected were there. Look, I believe that there's a lot more life in the universe than we've been told. There's a whole UFO disclosure thing going on right now. I think we're going to learn some things about our place in the universe. I don't think we're alone, and we'll see what happens.
I'm excited for it, and most importantly, I want these astronauts to be safe. That's the big key. Tony Shaffer, brother, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, before we go, another virus in Wuhan. You're never going to believe this.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
The crisis inside Ukraine has reached a catastrophic level, with the elderly Jews pushed to the very limit.
Go inside. She's freezing cold. There's no electricity, no heat, no water. Winter is now a weapon of war, used against the elderly, the mothers, and the young children.
They've been lined up here for hours. These are precious people who are hungry, and they have nothing. If someone doesn't do something soon, a humanitarian disaster is coming. So many Jewish people who are just waiting for someone to care enough to pick up the phone.
Fears are growing that without an emergency, full-scale response, thousands will die this winter.
The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews needs your $25 gift now to help rush a winter survival food box of emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine. Time is critical. Please give now.
They've felt the shaking of missiles. These are people who have already endured so much suffering and disaster.
The fellowship has been here and across the former Soviet Union for decades, but the need has never been more urgent.
Taking out power, taking out water, simple water to drink. We're talking about the difference between life or death. Christian, Jew, standing shoulder to shoulder, saying, we're here to heal, we're here to help.
Your gift of only $25 helps rush a winter survival food box filled with life-saving emergency food for elderly Jews and families in Ukraine who are struggling daily to stay warm and fed. Please call or go online while there is still time.
Why go on Roe? Because 1 in 4 guys.
1 in 4 guys. 1 in 4 guys experience ED.
On Roe, ED feels like no big deal. Connect with a provider to find treatment that could be right for you. 100% online.
Roe designed or curated treatments to make ED feel less stressful. There are options to fit every need, like fast-acting dissolvables or daily gummies. If 1 in 4 guys deal with ED,
then 1 in 4 guys should go on Roe.
Guys, connect with a provider at roe.co to see if you qualify.
To a hacker, your tax return isn't just paperwork, it's a gold mine. Your social security number and bank data are their biggest payday of the year. Old antivirus software can't keep up. You need PCmatic. Our default deny technology blocks every single threat that hasn't been pre-approved. If we don't know it, we block it. Secure your return right now. Buy PCmatic antivirus and we will give you PCmatic VPN for free. American-made security for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Visit PCmatic.com.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
What is it with Wuhan, China in the headlines again? I mean, don't panic. It's not a human virus. It's not what you think. A bunch of self-driving robotaxis. I told you about the machines, guys. They malfunction, completely blocking traffic and leaving the riders totally stranded. And it's a bunch of cars stopped working because it had a virus in Wuhan. They must have run over a bat or something. I don't know how that works, but Rob, it's Wuhan. Wipe that place off the face of the earth.
Come on.
It's the worst. Everything bad happens.
It's been problematic of late. I'll agree with you on that one, Carl.
Okay, that's an understatement.
Hey, you had a rocket launch in your show. That was pretty cool.
That was pretty neat.
That was cool. We're going to talk about it tonight a little bit.
Yeah,
Good to see you, Carl.